because it's like to show up and do 100% is not enough.
Yes.
You've got to do 110 just to prove that you're, that you're pulling your weight more than you're exceeding expectation. Like, why can't you just meet expectation and that be a transaction?
Yes. I think because I was also encouraged to always go above and beyond.
Yes.
Because that's what makes you stand out.
Yes, but it's such a bullshit ego thing, isn't it? Because it doesn't do anything other than, like, what does the standing out do? It's essentially then borrowing back to our school experience of getting an A+ instead of an A.
Yes.
And what does it mean later on? It means nothing. It's nice to have an A+. I got an A+ once.
Did you?
Yeah, pretty much nothing else was an A+ though. I got it once. Quanta folks, and welcome to another episode of Fuck the Shoulds, Little Sister, Alchemising Education. I am Jodi from QuantiMama, and I'm joined by, again, one of my most favourite people in the world, Curious Quinn.
Oh, it's always good to be here. Thank you so much, QuantiMama.
So we are talking about when we were young today, because part of alchemising education is about recognising what we bring to our kids' education and then our viewpoints around that, how we approach the need for them to stay in their current education model despite how they might be appearing to us or experiencing life and perhaps not thriving as much as they could. And so there's a richness then when we consider their predicament or their schooling experience right now, particularly if they're not in a thrive state, of how we had our school experience. So what I want to do today is go back to what was it like when we were young. So we're going to have to brush away the dementia and Alzheimer's because we feel, that's right, the cobwebs, we feel very old, and think about our schooling experience and what that has meant for our lives, how we have ended up where we are now.
The impact of it. What's been the impact? What's been the influence? And it's interesting, isn't it? Because we often, and our kids go, oh, back in our day, it's always that expression, and we put it down as if to say it's not relevant.
Yes.
Like our experience isn't relevant to today because it was so long ago. Mm-hmm. And to a certain degree, we would like to think we have progressed and we have learnt from those days, but we tend to want to hold on to them, don't we?
Yes.
So we're not going to hold on to them, but we are going to, I guess, talk about our experience and look at the value of what we did experience.
Yes.
Without holding on to the way it was done in the good old days.
Yes.
Would that be fair to say?
Oh, I think so. I mean, look, there's no doubt that if we're talking, because obviously we're a certain vintage.
Yes.
Around the half-century mark, and one of the things that is such a stark contrast is that technology just dominates education everywhere. And I mean, that's even our experience from a homeschooling perspective. Like, I used to very much keep a lid on screen time with my kids and didn't know what was really happening at school. Turns out at school they use quite a lot of tech, which I didn't realise. I mean, this was in primary school. So when we then changed to homeschooling, I was like, holy crap, we're using heaps of tech. Like, you end up going to Google University to verify anything that might be of interest. So it's impossible to divorce education from technology, particularly for our kids these days. It is just enmeshed in the way they do daily life.
Totally.
So that's been a stark contrast, hasn't it?
Huge, absolutely huge. We didn't have that technology which tended to take over from the personal attention that we would have got, or the personal feedback we would have got.
Yeah. So I wonder if our education experience had more, I guess, stillness with learning, passive learning, like a teacher standing up at the chalkboard, writing stuff on there, you're sitting at your desk, handwriting down stuff because we didn't have computers and laptops and things like that at school either. So then there wasn't the same. It was literally passive learning where you would be receiving instruction and then playtime outside. Was that your experience of school?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess it was much more personal because you could sort of get the attention. You were actually, you had the eye contact, you had the ability to put your hand up and ask questions, listen to other people's questions. So there was a lot more, I think, interaction as a group. Now, of course, there's going to be those kids who say nothing and those kids always take over and are always asking the question, but there was a lot more personal interaction.
Yes.
And then that just, I guess, carried through from being in the classroom setting where you were doing things collectively, because you would also do things in pairs or in small groups. And I'm sure that does still happen if I think about, what I've seen.
But it's all focused around technology now.
Yes.
Like even those things that you do together, there's still the technology. I think that's the most stark contrast, which is why I feel so strongly about kids having playtime now. Like that is a huge part of my kids' daily life now. It's just playtime outside because we must counterbalance how much they are exposed to technology, even from the point of view of electromagnetic frequencies, because I just think that's a whole other conversation, but it's creating a lot of disease. Excuse me, but one of the things that I really reflect on when I think about my schooling experience was there was no such thing as a dumb question. And, like that, I was one of the class jokes when I joined ambulance, because we had a little squad where we would learn to be good little paramedics. And there was only about 20 of us, but I was known probably a bit like you. I was known as a bit curious because I always had questions. But that was my experience of schooling, was I could ask questions and there was no such thing as a dumb question. And I've become even more comfortable with that as an adult. Of if I have a question, then it's my belief that in the universal field, there's probably someone else has got that question too.
Totally.
So I'm picking up on the fact that it's a question that's resonating with the group. And I think that one of the things that by contrast with our kids is getting them curious about asking those questions, because partly I need to re-establish that trust that they can ask questions and they won't be fobbed off. Were you always curious?
Yeah, I think I was. I've always been one of those who, in a classroom or a group setting, if it would be listening to a guest speaker, or I've always been the one that's wanted to stick that hand up and just go and one more and one more. So I've always felt this need to just be mindful of that and to allow others to have questions, because everyone's got some great questions, and I think questioning is really important. And I feel like if I reflect back on my primary school years, which is where I seem to be going at the moment, is that, there was a lot of opportunity just to sit and work with another person. I'm just thinking about the blocks that we used to use in math, or where we would just sit there and we'd create little things and we would together work it out. So there's also that opportunity for teamwork that was just so natural as a part of our learning, was working together. Whereas I think, again, if we go back to the technology, was that the technology has us doing it individually a lot more. So those skill sets that we developed in our early years of talking, listening, working together, trying different things, laughing together, learning from each other.
Yes.
I think
that peer learning.
That peer learning is so strong and fun.
Yeah.
I mean, there's also times I'm sure where everyone feels a little bit, oh God, I didn't quite get that, or a little bit foolish, or a little bit, why don't I get that, and they do. But that's I think not a bad thing in a way, because then there's that push to try a bit harder. There's that little bit of a push. Hang on, I'm not getting it now. What is it? So trying to really tune in and listen a little bit more. And
so you would talk to your peers and create understanding through that too. And that, it's funny because one of the things that I believe, I'm a big fan of this, but it really works for me when I learn something, is a see one, do one, teach one. And I know that your beautiful husband has a way of saying, he's got a different phrase, but it's similar to that. But it's that idea of seeing or learning the skill and then having a kinesthetic experience and then teaching it. And so that's what I find is talking about something with someone is a way to solidify that or create greater understanding or filling out the details of learning that new thing. And I was just reflecting on what was school like for me. What are the standout things that I noticed and I want for my kids, and the standout things that I don't want for my kids. And funnily enough, the thing that just came through then was I still, at the ripe old age of 47, have a huge amount of shame about my school grades. And what those grades have done, like I was probably a B student when I could be bothered, but I really couldn't be bothered. I'm known as a one draft wonder. Like I just smash out shit, write stuff down and I go, yep, check for spelling mistakes, make sure punctuation's right, move on. I don't want to go through the editing process. You know that about me, right? I really am a one draft wonder. And I mostly ask it, but it doesn't really work for school, and certainly not, as a say a teenager in high school. So my marks didn't reflect, I think, my skill set if I had have been interested in having presence with that. And those marks, they were based on one teacher's assessment of what I'd done, and they have stayed with me. And what's really interesting is the overarching thing of what those marks have stayed with me and what they signify is that I'm not very smart. And that's quite surprising to people when they talk to me, because I come across quite confident. As we know, I'm a have a crack kind of gal, like anything. I was just saying to you, that yesterday I was teaching myself new skills to do with website stuff, and sometimes that's exhausting and sometimes it's great. But I will have a go at all those sort of things. So I don't shy away from learning new skills. But that has happened, that has evolved with no thanks to my schooling experience, because my schooling experience was very much, you're not very smart. So just choose something and stick with that and get good with that, but you won't ever set the world on fire. And if I can prevent my kids or in some way have a hand in softening that exposure, then I am so grateful, because it's been a real limiting belief that has stayed with me for, 35 years. That's a crap load of time to hang on to something that may or may not be true and it's based on someone else's bloody opinion of, one essay or one bit of schoolwork. It's nonsense.
And as we know, the curriculum is set out for us as to what we need to learn, whereas your choice, say by going through and learning about a website, is what is your motivation.
Yes.
So, and the way you can assess whether you've learned it or not is whether the website's up and running, or whether it's got all the material on there that you're looking for, or it's got all the different sections that you need. And then you're motivated to work on that section or write about that or learn about it. So the grading system, I think, as you've sort of put it can be very limiting.
It really can,
really
can't it?
limiting and very detrimental to one's love of learning. So, I focused for my kids on always was about effort rather than the grades. I've never wanted to focus on grades, because I do feel like if they've given their best, then that's all that matters. But those grades are so important to the system.
Yes,
because that's right. Their measure as well as to whether their students are hitting the mark or not. So,
and whether the system is successful.
Correct, and whether the system's successful.
Yeah, it's actually not an assessment of the child's understanding and learning. It's a critique of the system. It's a quantitative assessment.
So I think the grading system has been it's there from the very beginning, isn't it? Although I think in maybe the junior years they don't put the assessments in so early, but for some reason kids learn really fast.
Well, I think they do. I think about now what our kids have experienced, and obviously we've had our kids homeschooling now for about 2 years, and I even think about like the first words they learn, like the golden words and so forth.
Yes.
So, like our youngest, he just has been so put off learning any of those things, and he now has hit the point where he's interested in reading because he sees that that's a gateway to all kinds of things. I keep saying, hey, listen, if you decide you want to learn to read, but I intentionally pulled back on forcing it because he just kept shutting the whole thing down, and he's a determined little fellow, as you well know. So that kid's got his own mind, and you know, we're now doing the a lot of those familiarisation of those foundational words because he's ready and he's thirsty for it. But when we push that in his first year of school, he was completely resistant to it. Now, that was considered then a mark of him being unsuccessful because he wasn't learning those words. The kid switched on. So it's not an intelligence thing. We know he's a devious little bugger, so he's very creative and very forceful and very intentional. So it's not his intellect that's the problem, it was a willingness, which is, I guess, what you're picking up on. And I think that some of the stuff that happened when we were at school didn't have the same, it didn't feel like there was the same requirement to hit those markers. I certainly don't remember golden words and red words and blue words and purple words when I was in primary school. I remember early readers, but it didn't have the same, I guess, weight of expectation to hit those same words.
But I still feel like from a very young age, because we're in that classroom setting and we've mentioned it before, but there's always this maybe a curiosity to say, well, where are you up to? You're at that level. You've got that colour reader and I'm on this colour reader. There's always these markers.
Yes.
Whether it be a grade or a colour or a level or a whatever they call it, from the very beginning we're set into groups. Well, you can be in that group over there and you can be in this group. And very quickly we know whether we're in the top group or the bottom group.
Yeah.
So regardless of whether it's an A, B or a C, we still know where we sit. And from a very, very young age, I mean, kindergarten doesn't do that.
That's
But
right.
as soon as you go into prep,
The assessment
starts. So then there is this part of us that is always comparing. Always. And it doesn't matter what year level we're in, there's always this, where am I at compared to them? And, they're the smart ones and they're the, like we label so early. And with that labelling comes the limitations. And then comes the, I'm not good enough, or I want to be more like them, rather than accepting our own beautiful wisdom and the things that light us up as an individual. So very early on we are put into the collective.
Oh, and the weight of that as well. I mean, it's just, so then we think about how do we alchemise education to not put that weight on children at such an impressionable age. And I also reflect on, the certain ages where you're very absorbent. And so up until that age of sort of 7 or 8 where consciousness really comes in and the brainwave changes from a theta, which is a very absorbent sort of hypnotic brainwave, you're intentionally spongy in those early years because you're downloading as much as you can in this overstimulated world. And so, I think about the way our education system was when we were having the experience all those moons ago and what it is now, and how do I draw the really juicy, nourishing parts of our educational experience and bring it into my children's experience now. And if I had a choice, if I had an opportunity to decide what do I want my education to be as a child, would I have chosen to be at school? I think with my wisdom now, I wouldn't.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think, again, it comes down to the individuals too, doesn't it? And this is where, you know, as a student for me, I was really comfortable in structure.
Yeah.
A bit like my daughter. You know, we've loved to know, we love certainty. We love to know what the parameters are, so that opportunity to be creative was definitely there in the younger years. But then suddenly there was an element of safety by knowing what the parameters were. So, and in hindsight for me then, if I look back on that and the impact on me, is it actually stopped my creativity.
Yeah. I mean, you by your own admission are a rule, you were a rule follower as a student.
Oh, yeah, I did everything that was expected of me. I loved just being, in those guidelines and just knowing what I had to do and just working towards that. So there was no room for curiosity and creativity. That's the thing I think for me personally was really limiting for me, because I think there was a part of my personality that was drawn to that certainty, that safety, that knowing what the rules were, knowing what I was expected to try and work towards. But it didn't develop that curiosity and that creativity in me.
Because you're in a containerised environment.
Correct. So that for me, I think, was really limiting. At the time, I didn't know it. At the time, I felt okay with it. And it wasn't until I sort of went through life and, you know, became a mother and then went, hang on.
That's life's great university.
Oh, it has been the best university, the best learning environment for me. Bloody hard.
Yeah, I wouldn't give it a 5-star review.
But it's where the gold is, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, I kind of realised that that's where my growth has been greatest, is that university of life. So I was really happy in that container.
Yes.
Really happy, because I wasn't challenged as much, I guess. Everything was safe and easy and done for me and prescribed for me. And then suddenly I was at home with 2 children and I had to find my way, and it was bloody hard. And that's when I think I realised that I didn't have that creative element as much as I would have liked. I would tap into it through raising the kids with their own, you know, willingness to be creative. But I wasn't one of those mums that loved sitting down and, you know, creating a piece of art with the kids and just having fun with them, because I didn't know how to function within that creative, curious, open space.
It's a creativity that's there by service, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you're shepherding young children and you know, meeting their needs. So it's purposeful, and I guess it still has edges to it. It's not that free-flowing. So I'm just curious about, I guess, when you reflect on school as a holistic thing, or, you know, what happened for our experience, and you look at the skills or the creativity or how you roll in your daily life, would you say that that you could have reached where you are with a totally different school system or educational system?
I think that I have placed, I'll say me, I've placed limitations on myself because of the fear of not being good enough. And I think that came out of the fact that I was so used to being in a controlled environment. And suddenly I'm trying to find my way outside of a controlled environment, outside of maybe social norms and social expectations. So here I am now in my 50s,
Yes.
and trying to rediscover myself, which is much harder when you've got so much programming behind you. And I really wish now that I was able to be a bit more free-flowing and more creative and more braver around just going with the flow and just trying something new. Whereas I feel like I am restricted by that fear of free flow. Yeah, so
it's an interesting thing because, with my loving gaze upon the way you conduct yourself, I see a lot of bravery and a lot of creativity. So it's interesting how that inner critic is still very strong. I certainly use my schooling experience to motivate my and inform my decision making around how I shepherd my kids' experience now. And I think that once we made the decision to give the kids the option to homeschool, it's not like we said you're going to homeschool. We invited them. Would you like to? And it was a resounding hell yes. So even with all those decisions, I want for my kids to get to that place exactly like you're talking about, where they can allow their true essence through with the minimum amount of limiting programming that keeps them silent and still and containerized, so that they can just be the best version of themselves and be happy about that, not give that inner critic that voice.
Correct. Yeah, it's that inner critic that's so, I keep using the same word, but limiting and keeps us down.
The inner critic is like, if ever there was a should that should be fucked, like, it's the inner critic, because it's of no value, and it's not reflected by those around you. It's not reflected by your achievements as well, whatever that means. It's almost a materialistic thing. But, like the legacy of this life, I don't think we're just this, skin and bones that everyone sees. I see that our energy field is much greater than that, but I do still think there is an opportunity for experiencing life and everything it is to be human and have the existence of being human and all the emotions and energy associated with that. And with that, we contribute to our community and our society in some meaningful way, whether that's leaving people in a better place or touching people with our heart. That did sound dirty, and I didn't mean for it to go dirty so quickly, but you know what I mean, that connection. It's, so...
Yeah, I feel like the way I was educated didn't allow for that heart-based experience and for that expression.
Do you think education now, because one of our nearest and dearest has done a lot of emotion-led teaching, and I'm curious about, her experience is her own to comment on, but I'm curious, as a teacher, can you be emotion-led, and is there a class environment where it can be successful? Because my sneaking suspicion is you would need much smaller class sizes if you were going to do it from an industrialised education point of view.
Absolutely, and that's why it's not done, because it's
set to fail immediately, because you're trying to fit it into a system that doesn't support it from the outset. Absolutely.
And I think that perhaps the way we have, and this is probably a whole nother topic again, but, where women have felt like we've been given the invitation to be everything.
Yes.
To be the homemaker, the career maker, the mother, the wife, which are all big roles in themselves. And
show up with our soul desires as well and make them happen. And bloody hell, you put all of it on the table. That's a lot of responsibility.
It's a lot. So, I think going back to the smaller classroom sizes is the only way. And through our friend's experience, she works best with the smaller groups.
Yeah.
Because the heart-based learning takes time. It's not something that's... It has to be...
it's an exchange.
It's an exchange,
yes.
And it can't be formulated. It can't be formulated. And so therefore it can't be efficient.
Correct.
So we go back to this efficiency that's required within a business model around the education, and I understand it. But, I really now, in hindsight, when I think about my role as a mother and the gold in the value that we give to our kids.
Yes.
You know, I'm very grateful that I haven't done a lot of work over the years. I wouldn't have been one of those mothers who would have been very present at all if I was working.
Yes.
Because I work, when I put into my work, I traditionally have done 110%. I'd always be there longer hours. I'd be always doing extra work. I'd be thinking about it in the evening. Now, there was no room for me then to be present with my children. So trying to do it all is near impossible. But I think that's because I was always good in the workplace because I had structure around me.
Yes. But that unhelpful belief system that you were identifying before is probably the overcompensation that shows up in your work where you're doing 110%, because it's like to show up and do 100% is not enough.
Yes.
You got to do 110 just to prove that you're, that you're pulling your weight more than you're exceeding expectation. Like, why can't you just meet expectation and that be a transaction?
Yes. Yeah. I think because I was also encouraged to always go above and beyond.
Yes.
Because that's what makes you stand out.
Yes. But it's such a bullshit ego thing, isn't it? Because it doesn't do anything other than, like, what does the standing out do? It's essentially then borrowing back to our school experience of getting an A+ instead of an A.
Yes.
And what does it mean later on? It means nothing. It's nice to have an A+. I got an A+ once.
Did you?
Yeah, pretty much nothing else was an A+ though. I got it once. It's funny the things you remember, and I kind of go, oh, it's like you won that round. Yes. I won that round because I exceeded expectations. Yeah. But this nowhere in this exceeding expectations sort of situation do we ever say, well, what about the individual? Have they met their own needs? Have they exceeded their own needs?
Do you know what? Something that was really a stark realisation for me recently was when we went to our Year 12 graduation. And even walking into that, I felt a little bit like, oh, what's this going to be like? Because it was all about celebrating the high achievers. All the awards, all the ones for each subject that got, the accolade for being the highest achiever. Nowhere in any of that was there a celebration of the individuals. I felt enormously proud of my daughter because she was celebrating her own individual uniqueness, and that was beautiful. But nowhere in that graduation ceremony was there that opportunity for that. To just be proud of who they are and what they achieve personally. It was all about the scoring and the high achievers, and that really stood out to me in that moment. Is that's what we do.
Well, when you celebrate the high achievers, it's the school basically saying, "Didn't we do a good job?" Because these are examples of kids. I mean, what about the kid that was a D- student that then got a C? Like. That's a greater achievement than any kid that's a straight A student.
Yes.
A straight A student is in the right environment and it makes sense, or they're disciplined and they'll have mental health issues later on. We'll see. But, the kid that pulls himself up and the information lands and you see an actual qualitative improvement in their grades because we're doing that assessment.
Yes, or the personal growth that student's achieved on a personal level. Like, what is it when they came in at Year 7 or they came in at prep, and what have they achieved at the end of it? I remember vividly also in kindergarten seeing these young children who were absolutely terrified at the end of year Christmas concert and just stood up there and just didn't even look out to the crowd, just looked at their feet the entire time, absolutely horrified. But you know what? When I saw them in their grade 6 graduation and how they were up there and they were dancing and singing and talking, that's an achievement.
Yes, that's right. Because that's personal growth.
That's the personal growth that I feel like we're lacking within, or we're not reflecting on, or we're not helping our children perhaps see that personal growth as a massive achievement. That's that heart-based growth and learning that I feel.
Well, that's what we model to our kids now, don't we? I mean, you and I particularly, and we're surrounded by other adults, mainly women, who are doing the same thing. And that's what I want my kids to to see. I want them to see me having a go, me, alchemizing, limiting beliefs and coming out the other side and perhaps getting a new skill set and, contributing to my society or community and acknowledging that,
Being the example for them and knowing that we are forever learning, and we've said that before, and we demonstrate that. And, that's what's important, is demonstrating those life skills, those connections to our community, the support that we show each other, the laughing at when we've got things wrong or we've made a mistake. I really celebrate that now with my kids, is when I've made a mistake, it's like, oh yeah, gosh, I got that wrong, didn't I? Because I want them to know that that's always going to happen.
That's right. That's the human experience.
The human experience.
Oh, I know. Good stuff. Well, good to dust the cobwebs off and just travel back in time and revisit that time and, would you do it differently? Would you not do it differently? Look, it's all part of that richness of being a human and having that experience. And if you can take the wisdom from that and apply it to your life now, then that is the ultimate marker of success.
Absolutely.
Until next time, Curious Quinn, thank you again for your delightful company.
Yeah, and look, if we've got any of our listeners who have, something they'd like to sort of address, or they've got a question, please, we'd love to hear from you, because there's so many things we love to talk about.
Yes, drop us an email on the QuantiMama.com website, and we love these conversations. And if you're, feeling like you need some support with your child, they're perhaps not thriving in their, current education model, then check out the upcoming Take the Leap program. We're running more. McGill and I are going to run some more classes, and really it's centered in deprogramming the parent, not reprogramming the child.
Yes.
We're about stripping back and getting back to soul expression and heart desires and the richness of life.
And I think, having done the program myself, I really feel like it's an opportunity for us to reflect on what we got out of our own education.
Yeah.
What was the gold? What was the gold? What were the things that we could have or we would have liked to have done differently? And just understanding what part does it play in our overall, future success, whatever that means. Yeah.
Well, that's the whole point of having kids, is to shepherd them to have the greatest expression that they can. Yeah, that's the whole point of being a parent. Otherwise, just chuck them in an institution and there's no issue. You don't have to worry about it.
Anything.
Exactly. You can wash your hands from it. Exactly. Woohoo! Whoa! All right, beautiful people. Great to have company, and we will talk very soon.
Bye, everyone.
See you.